I learned that my wife was cheating on me with her boss. To get back at her, I took something very important to her and sought revenge in a severe way. Klaus had always taken pride in his ability to distinguish truth from lies. As a prominent lawyer, his career was founded on the skill of dissecting layers of deceit to uncover concealed realities. Nevertheless, nothing could have prepared him for the revelation he was about to stumble upon in his own home. It happened on a nondescript Thursday evening when Klaus returned home earlier than usual. The house, typically filled with Christine's vibrant presence, was eerily quiet, sending an unsettling feeling coursing through him. He called out for her, but there was no response. Baffled, Klaus made his way to their home office, a space where Christine often dedicated hours to her projects. The glow of the computer screen immediately drew his attention. It was unusual for Christine to leave her computer running. Driven by an insistent curiosity, Klaus approached the desk. There, on the screen, lay an open email, clearly not intended for his eyes. The words blurred as he absorbed the exchange between Christine and Aaron, her boss. It wasn't the flirtatious tone or the affectionate words that caught his attention first, it was the blunt acknowledgement of their ongoing affair. As Klaus read and reread the email, the room seemed to whirl around him. Each word felt like a heavy blow to his heart. Betrayal, a concept he had often encountered within courtrooms, had now infiltrated his own marriage. Christine and Aaron, two individuals he had placed unwavering trust in, had woven a tangled web of falsehoods, and he had unwittingly walked right into it. For a brief moment, Klaus was immobilized, the shock holding him in place. Then, the lawyer within him surged to life. He began systematically gathering evidence, forwarding the incriminating emails to his personal account, and taking screenshots. His legal mind, trained for battles in the courtroom, was already crafting a strategic plan. However, beneath the composed calculations, a tempest of emotions raged: anger, hurt, disbelief, a turbulent mix that threatened to shatter his usual stoic demeanor. Hours later, when Christine returned home, she found Klaus sitting in darkness, the computer screen's faint glow casting somber shadows across his face. "Klaus, you're home early," she remarked, her voice tinged with surprise. "Is everything all right?" For a moment, Klaus contemplated confronting her. But as he looked up at her, he realized that this was not the time for emotional confrontations. This was a game of strategy, not a brawl. "Everything's fine," he replied with a calmness he did not truly feel. "Just wrapping up some work." Christine appeared relieved and vanished into the kitchen. Klaus listened to the sound of her movements, a once comforting noise that now served as a stark reminder of the deceit that had infiltrated his life. That evening, Klaus lay awake, his gaze fixed on the ceiling. Images of Christine and Aaron, sharing laughter at company functions, flickered through his mind. He dwelled on the late nights Christine had claimed to be working and the business trips she had undertaken. Each piece of the puzzle fit together, constituting a breach of their marital vows. As dawn broke, Klaus made a resolution. He would not let this betrayal go unanswered. He would utilize every available tool to exact a revenge that was precise, lawful, and devastating. This was not merely a personal vendetta, it was a pursuit of justice, the kind of justice a wounded heart sought in the aftermath of betrayal. The morning following his discovery presented a stark contrast for Klaus. The sun beamed brightly, birds sang outside the window, but within him, a tempest brewed. Sleep had eluded him, as his thoughts raced with plans and strategies. Today marked the commencement of his meticulous revenge campaign. Sitting at the breakfast table, exchanging superficial conversation with Christine, Klaus's mind was elsewhere. He was sketching the blueprint for his retaliation, with Aaron, the intruder into his life and marriage, as the primary target. Klaus recognized that, in his profession, information equated to power, and he possessed the means to unearth the darkest secrets. He commenced his day at the office, delving into Aaron's professional life. He had a gut feeling that Aaron, like many high-flying executives, harbored skeletons in his closet. It didn't take long for Klaus to uncover the initial signs of financial irregularities within Aaron's company, accounts that didn't reconcile, suspicious transactions, and unexplained expenditures. Leveraging his legal expertise and network, Klaus gathered evidence, assembling a case of corporate misconduct. He had to tread cautiously, aware that any direct accusation from him might be perceived as a personal vendetta. He opted to assume the role of a whistleblower, an anonymous champion of justice. He compiled a comprehensive dossier of evidence and forwarded it to the regulatory authorities, ensuring his involvement remained concealed. The consequences of his actions didn't manifest immediately, but Klaus was patient. He understood that the wheels of justice turned slowly yet inevitably. In the interim, he observed Aaron and Christine persisting in their charade, oblivious to the impending storm. Several weeks later, the initial fissures began to surface. Aaron's company became the target of a regulatory investigation, sparking rumors and a sharp drop in stock prices. Aaron found himself under immense pressure, his demeanor shifting from charming to tense and harried. Christine noticed the change as well. She grew increasingly concerned about Aaron, inundating him with calls and messages that became more frequent and desperate. Klaus observed all of this with a detached composure. It was an unusual sensation, orchestrating the downfall of the man for whom his wife cared deeply, yet it fueled his sense of justice, primal and unwavering. As the probe into Aaron's company grew more intense, Klaus found himself assuming a dual role. By day, he played the part of the supportive husband, offering a steady shoulder for Christine to lean on. By night, he acted as the mastermind behind her lover's impending downfall. The dual nature of his existence drained him, but he couldn't halt his actions now. He had ventured too far down this path. The chapter concluded with Klaus sitting alone in his office late at night, the sole illumination emanating from his computer screen. He had just received an update on the investigation, and it was gaining traction, with Aaron at the epicenter. Klaus leaned back in his chair, a cold sense of satisfaction settling in his heart. The initial strike had proven successful, but this was only the beginning. More needed to be accomplished, more pain had to be inflicted. The game had just commenced, and Klaus was resolute about winning it. The aftermath of the initial attack had set the stage for Klaus's next move. He observed as Aaron struggled with the intensifying investigation, his once unshakable confidence visibly eroded. Christine, too, felt the impact, her anxiety for Aaron casting a pall over her formerly carefree demeanor. It was time for Klaus to weave the next layer of his intricate revenge plan. Klaus understood that to truly dismantle Aaron, he had to launch attacks from various angles. He initiated efforts to undermine Aaron's support network within the company. Employing his legal connections and influence, Klaus subtly sowed seeds of doubt and mistrust among Aaron's closest allies. He discreetly circulated anonymous tips about potential involvement in financial improprieties, planting suspicions that took root quickly. Simultaneously, Klaus began to manipulate Christine's perception of Aaron. He skillfully dropped hints about Aaron's past transgressions, feigning ignorance regarding their affair. He casually mentioned how colleagues often betrayed one another during crises. These subtle insinuations were designed to exploit Christine's insecurities, causing her to question Aaron's loyalty and motives. Christine's trust in Aaron began to waver. She confronted Aaron about the rumors and allegations, further adding to his stress. Their relationship, initially built on secretive glances and stolen moments, couldn't withstand such pressure. The strain became evident, their once passionate affair reduced to hushed arguments and anxious whispers. Klaus observed this unfolding with detached efficiency. Every move was meticulously calculated, every outcome anticipated. Yet, amid this carefully orchestrated turmoil, he felt an indescribable pang. Was it remorse? Sympathy? He pushed these emotions aside. This was not the time for sentimentality. As the investigation into Aaron's company deepened, more evidence of misconduct surfaced. Klaus had ensured that the trail of evidence pointed directly at Aaron, portraying him as the mastermind behind the financial irregularities. Aaron's downfall was swift. The board distanced themselves from him, and he was eventually suspended, awaiting the investigation's outcome. Christine was devastated. She had never fathomed that her affair would lead to such catastrophic repercussions. Her guilt was tangible, and she began to withdraw, her former self fading into a mere shadow. Klaus observed her transformation with a sense of hollowness in his victory. He had achieved his revenge, but the price had been much steeper than he had anticipated. The chapter reached its conclusion with Klaus sitting in his study, the weight of his actions bearing heavily on his shoulders. He had accomplished what he had set out to do, yet the satisfaction he had expected to feel was conspicuously absent. Instead, a growing emptiness pervaded him, a realization that his quest for vengeance had altered him in ways he couldn't reverse. The boundaries between justice and vengeance had blurred, leaving him in a moral gray area. As he contemplated his next steps, Klaus knew one thing for certain: the game was far from its conclusion. In the subsequent weeks, the landscape of Klaus's meticulously planned revenge began to undergo a transformation. The once vibrant Aaron had become a mere shadow of his former self, suspended and publicly disgraced. Christine, entangled in the scandal's vortex, found herself isolated and torn. However, as Klaus observed the aftermath, a subtle shift occurred within him. The thrill of vengeance was gradually being replaced by a thoughtful contemplation of the collateral damage. Klaus found himself standing at a crossroads. The relentless pursuit of revenge had consumed him, but now, in the quiet aftermath, he began to question the true toll of his actions. The victory he had envisioned felt hollow, devoid of the sweet satisfaction he had anticipated. The emotional burden borne by Christine, the woman he had once loved despite her betrayal, weighed heavily on him. For her part, Christine was a complex tapestry of guilt and remorse. The affair, which had commenced as an exhilarating escape, had transformed into a nightmarish ordeal. Her relationship with Aaron, now strained and tainted by the scandal, served as a constant reminder of the chaos she had played a part in creating. She yearned for a semblance of normalcy, but with each passing day, it appeared more distant, like a fading dream. Aaron, stripped of the power and prestige that had once defined him, grappled with the consequences of his actions. His fall from grace transcended the professional realm, delving into the personal domain. The investigation had laid bare his transgressions, and the court of public opinion had rendered its harsh verdict. Amidst this turmoil, Klaus found himself in a state of introspection. The legal battle he had waged, while effective, was not just against Aaron but against his own sense of betrayal. However, the emotional triumph he sought remained elusive. The stark realization that revenge could not mend his wounded heart began to dawn on him. The satisfaction derived from witnessing Aaron's downfall was overshadowed by the complexity of his feelings toward Christine. As Klaus grappled with the harsh reality of his deteriorating marriage, he was compelled to confront the paradox of his revenge. His initial goal had been to punish Christine and Aaron, but now he found himself sharing in their suffering. The clear lines that once separated right from wrong, justice from vengeance, had merged into a murky, indistinct gray area. One evening, as Klaus sat alone in his study, he was taken aback by Christine's unexpected entrance. She stood there, displaying a blend of defiance and vulnerability, her eyes searching his for something elusive. The air was heavy with unspoken words, the years of their shared life hanging like a weight between them. "Klaus, we need to have a conversation." Christine's voice remained steady, but her eyes betrayed the inner turmoil. "I understand that what I did was unforgivable, and I don't expect you to comprehend it fully, but we cannot continue like this. We are tearing each other apart." The ensuing confrontation became a cathartic release of pent-up emotions. Accusations and confessions, regrets, and realizations were laid bare. Klaus listened as Christine bared her soul, her words a mixture of apology and explanation. The chapter came to an end with Klaus, once again alone, contemplating the ruins of his marriage and the remnants of his revenge. The recognition that his pursuit of retribution had led them both to an irreparable point was a bitter pill to swallow. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was undeniable: the game of revenge had exacted a heavy toll, a cost that was only now becoming painfully evident. As daylight broke over the city, Klaus sat in his office, replaying the events of the previous night in his mind. The candidness of their confrontation had left him drained yet strangely unburdened. It was as if the veil of anger and hurt that had obscured his vision was gradually lifting, revealing the stark reality of their situation. He had achieved his revenge, but at what price? The legal proceedings against Aaron had reached their inevitable conclusion. Aaron was officially ousted from the company, his reputation in tatters. The news should have brought Klaus a sense of closure, but instead, it felt like a Pyrrhic victory. As he read the headlines, Klaus couldn't help but feel a twinge of empathy for Aaron. Like himself, Aaron was a casualty in a war that had spiraled out of control. Meanwhile, Christine had transformed into a mere shadow of her former self. The vibrant, confident woman he had married had been replaced by someone subdued and introspective. The affair and its aftermath had taken a toll on her, peeling away the veneer of their marriage to reveal the underlying fractures. Klaus realized that their relationship had been unstable long before Aaron entered the picture. This realization struck Klaus like a revelation. In his relentless pursuit of punishing Christine and Aaron, he had lost sight of what truly mattered. The love and trust that had once defined his marriage to Christine had been replaced by a chasm of bitterness and remorse. He had been so fixated on winning the game that he hadn't paused to consider the consequences. Later that day, Christine visited Klaus's office. They sat across from each other, the emotional distance between them more significant than the physical. "Klaus, I've been reflecting," Christine began, her voice filled with uncertainty. "Perhaps it's time for us to confront the truth. We can't undo what's happened, but we can choose how we move forward." Klaus looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time in months. He saw the weariness in her eyes, mirroring his own. "I understand," he replied softly. "I've been so consumed by the desire for retribution that I didn't see the cost of my revenge. I'm sorry, Christine. Sorry for the pain I've caused." The conversation that ensued was challenging but necessary. They discussed their failed marriage, their shattered dreams, and an uncertain future. It was a conversation devoid of blame, marked instead by a mutual acknowledgement of their shared shortcomings. As the sun set, casting long shadows in the office, Klaus and Christine arrived at a decision. They would part ways, not out of spite, but because they recognized that some things, once broken, could not be repaired. The decision was mutual, a final act of respect for the love they had once shared. The chapter concluded with Klaus alone in his office, the weight of the day's events weighing heavily on his shoulders. He had played the game of revenge to perfection, but ultimately, he had lost more than he had gained. The victory felt empty, and the spoils of war amounted to nothing more than memories of happier times. As he turned off the lights and stepped out of the office, Klaus understood that this chapter of his life had come to an end. It was time to start anew, to find a way forward in a world that had irrevocably changed. The game was over, and now it was time to pick up the pieces.